Welcome to the Draft Professor, everybody. I am joined by Ryan and Dalton. And Dalton, you've been on the channel, a few times in the past, helped us do some wide receivers and some other college football previews. Ryan, this is your first Draft Professor podcast. I want to say welcome to the channel. How are you doing on this fine Super Bowl Sunday?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, and can't wait to talk some Raiders football here.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing some Raiders mock drafts on the Draft Professor Simulator. And the Raiders' first round pick is kind of obvious. So we're going to skip the first round challenge part of the normal podcast we do with teams. But Ryan, as you look at the Raiders draft, what are the needs that you see on the roster as this? I mean, we haven't even really started the offseason yet. But what do you see as the primary roster needs for the Raiders?
The Raiders have holes all over the roster. So obviously, if you're going to plug Mendoza in at quarterback in the first round, the second round, they need offensive line help. They need edge rushers. They need linebackers. They need corners. They need a wide receiver. They could use safety. So this could go pretty much a ton of different directions. Obviously, having $100 million in free agency and cap space will fill some of those holes, but we don't know who they're going to go out and add on the market yet. So this is wide open into the second round. They could go pretty much anywhere other than probably running back or tight end, and it would be a good pick.
Okay. Well, and I look forward to those discussions. We're going to be doing something called a second round challenge on the Draft Professor Simulator. So a second round challenge is 10 unique 2-round drafts. And Ryan will be able to explain his logic for each of the second round picks. And Dalton, being a great friend of the channel, podcasted with us many times. Dalton, I'm glad that you could join us. So to do a second round challenge, pick the team. The second round Fanatic challenge is right here. So when I check that box, the simulator is basically going to do 10 straight mocks. They're all linked, so it's going to know who you picked the previous time, and it's going to become a snipe fest. So the players you like will get sniped. Is there any world where Fernando Mendoza is not the pick 1-1 for you, Ryan?
For me, no. I've been on the bandwagon since probably 2018, 2019 that the Raiders need to address the quarterback position. So being at the top of the draft, there's no guarantees in future years they would be in position to get one. And when you are, you just have to take them. And if it doesn't work out, then you might be in position again in 2 or 3 years to do it again. But short of a massive trade haul, and I'm not sure I would do that because there's really no avenue to fill that position in free agency. So the Raiders would have to play another season with Geno Smith or some other, low grade quarterback to get through a season. I just don't think the fan base can handle that.
Okay. Here were the picks that went after the Raiders: Bain, Tate, Reese, Maui Noah, Tyson, Downs, Styles, Bailey, Woods, Ione, Love, Delane, Lemon, Falk, Simpson, Lomu, Sadiq, Fano, Allen, McCoy, Pregnon, Proctor, Boston, Banks, Parker, Concepcion, Thieneman, Terrell, McDonald, Howell, Young, Hood, Ihenekor, Johnson, with the Raiders on the pick at 36.
So, yeah, obviously those 2 picks right in front of them will both be needs, Heineker and Johnson. So those guys being off the board, addressing right tackle and corner. You'd have to look at the tackle position. Yeah, obviously there you clicked on Monroe Freeling, who would be an option. He's played left tackle at Georgia, but the Raiders could use him at right tackle as long as they have Colton Miller on the roster. Or they could attack edge. We don't know what's going to happen with Max Crosby in the offseason. If they do move on from Max Crosby, obviously they would need some edge rushers. In this particular case, even wide receiver, what wide receivers would be on the board as well? Probably, I don't like any of those guys in the second round. At that point, I would probably lean with Freeling, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. the good pass protector, good run blocker. He's going to fly up boards here. I would expect once the draft gets around, he will not be on the board at pick 36. And if he was, the Raiders would do smart to address that offensive tackle position because they have to keep Fernando Mendoza upright. They gave up a ton of sacks last year to Geno Smith and pass protection. They have Charles Grant, but they can still develop him while Freeling gets a chance at that right tackle spot.
Any thoughts on Freeling in round 2, Dalton?
I'm a little lower on Freeling personally. He's a little further down my tackle board, but I definitely agree with the idea of going offensive line there. I also don't mind the idea of maybe looking guard because at that spot, I think guard might be a little deeper in the early second round, and you could even go with somebody like a Jennings Dunker that you could fail at right tackle and slot into guard, or have him push Glaze into guard as well.
Okay. And I'm sure we're going to get to some of those other positions. We've got 9 more mocks to go. I'll take Mendoza in round 1 again. And what I'm going to point out is, look, 9 picks before. So the Raiders are on the clock at 36. And you'll see that Monroe Freeling got conveniently sniped 9 picks before at 27. So if Freeling is off the board, Ryan, where are you going to look next?
I would look interior guard, as Dalton said, something along the offensive line to see what was there. I'm not as big on Dunker that he mentioned there. I think he is a guard. I don't think you even start him outside. And then if they're going to be an outside stretch zone team under Kubiak, I just don't think he fits that offense. I just don't think he has the movement skills in space. I don't like any of those players at 36. So then I would go to the defensive side of the ball or wide receiver again and see what is available there. Okay. Now, Christian Miller, I saw him down there as an interesting, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. They do need help inside. We don't know what kind of defense they're going to run. They don't have a defensive coordinator yet. But if Kubiak's going to bring over someone from the Seahawks, and they don't blitz a lot, so you're going to need 4-man pressure. The Raiders don't really have anyone inside that they can do that. Christian Miller can be a run stopper and add some inside penetration. So in this one, let's take Christian Miller, the defensive lineman out of Georgia.
And any thoughts on that, Dalton?
I don't mind that. I'm kind of with you, Ryan. I mean, there's so many holes in the defense as well. Like, you can pretty much go anywhere. On that, I don't mind Miller at all there.
Okay. So in the chat, I'm dropping where the players were on the board when we picked them. That'll become important once we finish all 10 mocks. And I'll kind of be able to explain how the simulator works a little bit more. So we're in the 3rd mock. I will take Mendoza again. Ryan, if there's ever a time you don't want me to take Mendoza in round 1, speak up. But I think it's just a foregone conclusion.
You can just take him 10 times. I'm okay with that.
Yep. Okay. So in this mock, Freeling and Miller are being sniped before the Raiders were on the clock at 36. And this is where I was saying a little bit backstage that you're going to begin to see why you can't pick the same player twice. The simulator's going to snipe before your pick, and then that might push somebody down that you want, but in some cases it might push somebody down that you don't want, so then you have to pick a different player, and that's the challenge part of it. So, like, for example, Lee Hunter is here in this one. He wasn't there before. He was there in the first one, was not there in the second. He is again in the third. So,
okay.
So what would the Raiders do if you can't take Freeling and you can't take Miller?
Let's look at the wide receiver again. I'm hoping one of these wide receivers pops there because I'd love to get a guy for Mendoza. Again, the guys that are there probably, if you scroll down a little bit, I don't think any of those guys are going to be there or worth that pick.
Which specific wide receivers are you targeting?
If Concepcion fell out, he would be interesting. I think, obviously Boston would be in consideration just because of the size. The Raiders don't have a big X receiver outside with ball skills, especially when Mendoza's going to be throwing these back shoulder fades. Maybe if Mekhi Lemon, I don't think he would get that far, but someone like those guys. What's in the linebacker room?
Great.
The Raiders need linebackers as well.
So Anthony Hill is
saying that the Raiders shouldn't have a linebacker room where the best linebacker is Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like a lot of those guys, but I probably like the guys on that list more in the third round.
Okay.
Than taking here. Let's go back to the edge. See what's there. Young, Thomas, those guys are more third round for me. I don't see a guy that I would reach for there. I guess we're going back. Let's go to the corner room. Colton Hood is interesting. The corner out of Tennessee that was at the Senior Bowl. He's got size. He's got speed. Depending on the type of defense they run, he could be a fit. But if they were going to address the cornerback room, he would probably be the guy at this point. He's a late first, early second consensus type guy. So let's take Colton Hood, the corner out of Tennessee.
And Dalton, where are you on Hood right now?
I haven't finished up corners yet. We'll be covering that on our draft show in a couple weeks. But from what I've seen, I don't mind that at all at that spot.
Okay, so now we're doing the fourth mock, and you'll see that the players that you like the most will be conveniently sniped. It's going to get harder each time. So Freeling, Miller, Hood, sniped before your pick at 36. Pregnon dropped. He had not been there before.
And I see Proctor is on the board as well there too.
Ooh.
I need one of those other guys to fall that are above him, the Allen, Heineker, and Johnson.
I think you're going to have your chance.
Yeah.
They're just not now.
I like Pregnon. I'm probably a little lower than the consensus from his time at USC and Oregon, and I've watched a couple of games of his. I don't think he's a dominant first round guard. I saw a guy that was on the ground quite a bit, and a guy that he had strength in the running game. There was plays where he could move guys off the ball, and others where he just didn't get a ton of movement. And I think a little high at 36 to take a guy that's a straight guard that really doesn't have a lot of versatility. Proctor's a guard too. He's going to have to lose weight. I just don't think he has the foot speed to stay on the outside, especially at left tackle. Now, if the Raiders wanted to move him over to the right side, where you could help him with a tight end and a running back and chip and just get a mauler in the run game, that's a pretty good athlete. That's an idea.
Yeah, I like that.
And then I keep wanting to go back to the wide receiver room, but I just don't think those guys are dropping yet. No. Let's go to the safety room. There is a safety that I would love to have who might be on here. Where is the kid out of Toledo?
He's here. He's just going to be a little bit lower.
Okay.
If you like Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, he's sitting right here for you. This is going to be a great demo.
No, yeah, I do. I like him. He's got size. He's got ball skills. He can tackle. He can run. I think he's going to blow up after the combine. I think early second round. There's a chance he goes in the first round. So the Raiders really need secondary work. Like I said, if they're going to be running some sort of mix and match man coverage team, if they bring someone over from Seattle, they're rolling out Polamalu right now and Chin, who probably aren't fits for that. Let's take Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out of Toledo.
Okay. And observe that he's player 186. I've dropped that into the chat. This will be a great demonstration of why you do a few of these. Dalton, what are your thoughts on Emmanuel McNeil-Warren to the Raiders?
I totally agree on needing a safety. Again, pretty much any position on the defense, the Raiders could use some depth at the very least. They could use a guy that could compete to start. Is probably the best way to put it. Just because there are borderline starting caliber players all over the defense, but not really actual good starters. Polamalu's kind of proving that a little bit this year. Now, part of it is kind of his usage. Last year, there were a lot of things that went wrong under Pete Carroll, but I definitely think Polamalu and Chin don't really give you a ton in coverage.
I think too, when you start talking about these kind of defenses that Baltimore and Seattle runs, the key is the slot, and usually the slot is usually a versatile box safety that can cover and can tackle and can help in the run game, because those teams are going to go light in the box. That nickel star position has to be able to tackle and cover. And that's where I would see him fitting ultimately. And if they're going to run that, like I said, if you're not going to blitz and you're going to be light in the box, that guy that's playing the slot has to be a force in the run and pass game.
Yeah.
So Freeling,
I like for that, but I don't think he is going to. I think second round's a little rich for him.
So Freeling, Miller, Hood, McNeil-Warren sniped before pick 36. So Ryan, your thoughts here?
I almost did it last time. I still think Proctor kind of stands out there. Is kind of just that tackle that can really get guys moving in the run game. I would move him over to the right side. He may have to go inside the guard, but just to add another piece to the offensive line. If he was able to lose a little bit of weight, he's athletic. They threw him the ball. They handed it off to him at Alabama. I just don't like him alone on an island on the left side. But like I said, if you could put him on the right side where you could help him in pass protection, just let him maul people in the run game, I would go that route.
Okay. So we're now doing the 6th of the 10 mocks. Okay. So this time, Freeling, Miller, Hood, McNeil, Warren, Proctor, all sniped before pick 36. Abney's here. I don't know if he was here every time. Thieneman's here. And feel free to tell me where else you want me to go on the board.
Yeah, let's look at the corner room. I know you mentioned Abney. He's been there a couple times. I thought about him. I haven't done a lot of work on him, but from what I've read and heard, he's a really good man corner. So if the Raiders are going to go and try to play a lot more man defense, they have Porter, the second-year player. Stokes is a free agent, and then they really don't have a lot behind them. They need to add several players to this secondary. So let's take Keith Abney out of Arizona State.
I like that.
And Dalton, do you have anything on Abney yet?
Yeah, so I have a second-round grade on Abney. And, I mean, I think he kind of would complement Porter pretty well. They're very different corners, so I think you can, if you are running more of a man scheme, you can kind of really get matchups you like with those two guys. So I think that could be good in terms of the fit. It's so hard to know right now what corners are going to fit, not knowing who the defensive coordinator is going to be.
And they don't have corners anyways. I mean, you're looking at Porter, and right now it's DeCamerion and Richardson, who didn't play at all last year other than a handful of snaps.
Yeah. I mean, probably shouldn't.
Okay, so Freeling, Miller, Hood, McNeil, Warren, Proctor, Abney, all sniped before pick 36.
Yeah,
So,
my guy's right there. He just highlighted him. If he's there at 36, I'm running the card in, and that's the right tackle, Max Heneker out of Arizona State. Tremendous Senior Bowl.
And you're taking the offensive lineman over C.J. Allen?
I'm protecting the quarterback at all costs. That's my first line of business here. He's nasty. He's got that Raider mentality. He's athletic. He hasn't played a ton of football, but he won a lot of those matchups, and then he really showed out in the game. And I just think there's a really, really high upside here. They may be able to put him over at left tackle once Colton Miller's done with the Raiders in a couple of years. But I really want those bookend tackles to protect the quarterback, because Fernando Mendoza can't do anything if he's laying on the ground.
Okay, so now we're in, this is mock number 8. So in this mock, Freeling, Miller, Hood, McNeil, Warren, Proctor, Abney, Ihenacho sniped before pick 36. You can see Jeremiah Love in this one fell all the way to round 2. So when you do one of these second round challenges, you're going to begin to see some mocks that you don't always see. And in this one, like, for example, Caleb Banks fell to round 2. Lee Hunter's been there a few times. You haven't picked him yet. Anywhere else you'd look on the board?
I like Banks here. This would be the classic Al Davis pick, where it's just a big physical, get off the bus kind of guy, where just massive at like 6'6", 340 pounds. He didn't play a lot of football this year. He was hurt. You're banking on the upside here. He's not a finished product. But if he does, if you look a year or two down the line and he's, some version of Jalen Carter, I could see that. But it's a big boomer bust pick in the second round, just because of the injury history and just a lack of production. I think he had 4.5 sacks in 2024. But the Raiders need defensive linemen, and if they can just add those guys, they just need to keep adding until they get it right. So let's go with Banks on that pick.
So thoughts on Banks, Dalton?
Yeah, I'm very okay with that pick as well. I think, like Brian said, they just got to keep adding on the defensive line until they get another stud, because right now they hopefully will still have Max Crosby, and then it's really kind of just a bunch of other guys on that front four. They don't really have anybody really special. Adam Butler was a really solid, above average defensive tackle for a while, but I think he's starting to decline. So they're going to need to replace him. That's probably, and I just don't know if they really have anybody on the roster who can fill that at this point. I mean, maybe Thomas Booker if they bring him back, but I still don't think he has enough upside that you're going to pass on anybody in the draft.
Okay, so we've started the 9th. I took Mendoza at number 1. The 8 players that you've liked, Banks, Iheanacho, Abney, Proctor, McNeil Warren, Hood, Miller, Freeling, all sniped before pick 36.
Yeah, I think here you go back to the linebacker room. You know, if CJ Allen falls to that second round, the Raiders just haven't had that 3-down linebacker that can run around and create havoc. And if they're gonna like we talked about, if they're gonna play light boxes, they need linebackers that can cover, but they also need linebackers to be factors in the run game. And just to get an athletic sideline to sideline guy, the Raiders haven't taken a first-round linebacker, I want to say, since Rob Frederickson. It's been forever. We're talking early to mid '90s at that point. Maybe McLean. They took Rolando McLean. Throw him in there too, but that didn't work out.
Okay, so this is the 10th and final 2-round mock for the second-round challenge. And in this one, for example, Ty Simpson fell. And obviously, if you take Mendoza, you're not taking another quarterback. And I'm looking to see if Concepcion fell.
He may have. No.
No, he did not.
Okay. Yeah, you get to the 10th one here. You know, we've seen a lot of players. It gets a little tougher. I've wanted a wide receiver the whole time. I just don't want to take any of those ones at 36. Let's go to the offensive line again. What's in the guard room other than Proctor?
So Pregnon, Besantis, Dunker are the one, and any player at the top, think of them as the most frequently picked people on the simulator. It's not the site board. It's all what is Raiders fans' mock draft behavior. So if there's a player you're looking for, like Cage Casey or somebody else, they just might be further down.
Okay, what's on the edge? What's in the edge room? What we got over there? Pass rushers.
Zion Young, R. Mason Thomas, LT Overton, Romello Height. Some people like Lawrence this high.
No, I don't like any of those guys that high.
Let's go back.
Yeah, just the short arms. That's a problem for me at that point. And he's an undersized guy. If they're going to be a 4-man front, he's got to be able to play the run as well in a light box. Let's go back to the offensive line. Let's take Pregnon. Let's take the guard out of Oregon. Maybe I'm just not as high on him as everyone else, but they need offensive linemen. And if you could plug him in next to Jackson Powers Johnson, Colton Miller, Caleb Rogers, and then hopefully go get a right tackle in free agency, they have to fix the line. And that should be their thought in free agency and in the draft.
Okay, Dalton, any thoughts there? I'm like, where do you have Pregnon?
So Pregnon's my IOL 9, so I'm a little lower on him. I have Dunker and Besantis are my 2 and 3, so this probably be who I'd be kind of leaning if they're going for more of a pure guard. I think that's where I'd be leaning. But I don't mind Pregnon. I think the idea of they need offensive line desperately, because the Mendoza thing is the only way Mendoza is going to work out is if they protect him. I mean, the biggest thing, even going back to especially if you look back at his Cal tape where they didn't always protect him as well. And it looked better this year, but pressure, 99% of NFL quarterbacks, pressures, and it can really affect him. And I think, he's gotten better with it this year. He also had a lot more outs with having a lot of receivers that can win one-on-one more quickly, had a little bit better protection, had probably a better scheme with Cignetti. But I do think if you can't protect him, some of his flaws will become a little more glaring, or limitations. Probably not flaws. Limitations, probably the better word.
Okay. So go ahead, Ryan.
I was gonna say, I think too. We talk about Mendoza, but the Raiders have to unlock Genty as well. They took Ashton Genty 6th in the draft, and if they can't create running lanes for him, like those are the two guys right now, and Brock Bowers. Like as much as we want to talk about adding a receiver, like they need to run the football and they need to protect the quarterback. They can attack the wide receiver position next offseason in 2027, but right now it's get the offensive line, defensive line, so you can get the best out of Genty. Like running backs have a limited shelf life. They can't go through another season and not have him be a dominant player because where they took him in the draft. I was against taking him at 6, but they have him. He's on the roster, and now they have to do everything they can to maximize him because he's not going to be, with his running style, he's not going to be playing 8, 10, 12 years in the NFL.
Yep. And that's also going to be a rookie quarterback's best friend is to have a strong running game. So that makes a lot of sense. So Ryan, now that you got a feel for, first of all, Ryan, I want to give you props, right? Because you signed up to do a podcast, but like you and I had never met prior to us being backstage a few minutes ago. How do you feel after talking about 10 different second round picks there?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when I do mock drafts on my own, I've put a couple out on Twitter. Like I can go a million different ways because of just the way this roster is. So I kind of don't want to do any more until after free agency, just because like I said, in the second round with the Raiders, with this team, you could literally take 10 different guys could go in that spot. It's not like years past where you can narrow it down to like, okay, they need this position or these are the 2 or 3 players that fit. We have no idea where this team's going to go just because we don't know what scheme they're going to run on defense. We have an idea of what the scheme is going to look like on offense. We don't know what the front office, where they're budgeted, what positions that they want to bring in. Do they believe in all the young offensive linemen that they've drafted, whether that's Parham coming back, whether that's Jackson Powers Johnson, whether that's Rodgers or Grant? Do they think it was a Brennan Carroll issue and they can develop those guys? We have no idea what's going to happen with this team.
So Ryan and Dalton, do you guys want to spend like another, let's say, 30 minutes talking about your board through round 3, doing some other mock drafts? You guys have the time?
Yeah, I have a few minutes. I don't have a board put together or anything specifically, but just talking players, I can do that.
Okay. So
round 3 is interesting with where the Raiders can go.
Yep. So I'm going to show you one more button. This one, we won't be able to take Mendoza each time at 1. But I'll talk you through how to kind of set your board up on the simulator here, right? So I'm going to turn Fanatic mode on. We're going to bump it up to 8. I've got 3 rounds set. So we're going to do 8 3-round drafts for the Raiders. Okay. And we'll be able to take Mendoza the first time. We won't be able to take him 2 through 8. But those will be the times, Ryan, that we'll focus on, like if you want to make sure Viga's high enough that if he drops, the Raiders take him, or if you want to make sure that Concepcion is high enough that the Raiders take him if he drops to round 2. I'll talk you through that logic a little bit. So we'll do Mendoza round 1. And the last time we did this, was it Monroe Freeling that you took first? Yeah. Okay. So when we took Freeling the first time, he was 39th. See how he's 35th? So each time you pick a player on the simulator, they move up.
Okay.
Right? So we'll pick Freeling again here. So if you go Mendoza Freeling, what would you be looking at in round 3, Ryan?
Probably some defensive help because this team spent, I think, 9 of their last 12 top 100 picks have all been offensive players. And then they let a lot of, they let Spillane and Merrick and Hobbs and all those guys go last year, and they didn't really replace them. So I'd be looking along the defensive line. Dominic Orange right there is a big presence on the inside. I like the linebackers more in the 3rd round. I think there's some depth here. Kyle Lewis is a great, coverage guy. Jake Golday can rush off the edge. He's athletic. He can run. Is Rodriguez on there? I don't see Rodriguez from.
Rodriguez is usually going earlier. There's a lot of people that really like him, so yeah. I'm looking.
I like Jake Golday from what
Actually,
I've seen.
Rodriguez is here. He's just lower.
Yeah, I'm more in like the 4th round with him.
Yep.
I'd probably go Golday here. Add a linebacker that you can get him on the field. He's got size. He can really run. You can play the run downs. If you needed to put him out on the edge on 3rd down, he has some experience rushing the passer. I don't know how he is in pass coverage. That he may be a guy, if they move him down inside, then you would have to, have another sub package linebacker come in. But let's do Jake Golday in the 3rd round. I think that'd be good value.
Good. So Ryan Sparks, thank you for stopping by. So Ryan actually recorded one of these for the Bengals. So he's a huge follower of the channel. Ryan, it's great to see you here. Dalton, what is your grade on Golday?
I don't have a finished grade on him yet, but from what I've seen, that is somebody that I would be pretty okay with taking 3rd round. I think really like linebacker is definitely the spot in the 3rd round. There's a few different guys that I like. Rodriguez might be a little early there, but that's somebody. I mean, they just need somebody at the end of the day. They just need somebody at linebacker that's faster than Devin White. Like that's really like what it comes down to. Like they just can't have some like, especially like Devin White and Landon Roberts. They're just way too slow at that position. I mean, when you're getting torched by Justin Herbert running the ball, there's a lot of problems there with your linebackers, and so I think that's going to be a position. So I don't mind Golday there.
Okay, so for the 1st round pick, this is where we get to talk about, Ryan, some of your dream scenarios for round 2. If you had a dream and you could pick between Makai Lemon, Vega Ione, Denzel Boston, or Casey Concepcion in round 2, which dream makes you the happiest?
Makai Lemon for me. I think he's a dog. I think you can play him inside. You can play him outside. They can move him around. To see what Kubiak's done with Jackson Smith, Nick Jigma, and getting a similar type player, Makai Lemon, and being able to plug him into the offense and just have him and Brock Bowers and Genty, I think that would be a great combination. I know he's not going to get to the 2nd round, but I would love for the Raiders to find their way to get their hands on him.
Okay, and again, I like the way you dream. We're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're at the real 2nd round pick, and what the simulator will do is Freeling, who you took last time, has sniped 7 picks before you. I think last time you picked Colton Hood in this situation, but you can begin to see that like Hood, Abney, Miller, players that you took last time, are pushing their way to the top of the Raiders board.
Okay.
Right? Because those were guys that you took in the 2nd round challenge. Is there a player that you would look for to be better than Hood, Abney, or Miller here in round 2?
Probably not. Probably Miller or Hood is where I go on the defensive side of the ball here, because I don't see any of those offensive linemen sitting there, and I don't have Jennings Dunker at that high. So I'd probably stay with one of those 2 picks, Hood or Miller.
Okay, so Dalton, in round 3, if you got Colton Hood in round 2, what would you be looking at for round 3?
Round 3, offensive line is an interesting one. Assuming like no wide receiver yet, that could be somewhere to go. Especially with how deep this wide receiver class is, I think you can get somebody pretty good on the outside. Like the Raiders don't need a number 1, but they need an X is kind of the thing. Like their wide receiver 1 is Brock Bowers, but they need a true X. And I think this is where you could maybe look to go with that here.
So from what offensive lineman do you like specifically round 3? What wide receivers that are X's do you specifically like round 3?
So as far as offensive linemen go around round 3, some guys I would like would probably be, Rutledge would be a good one. I also don't mind the idea if you're still not sold on JPJ being a center. Parker Brailsford from Alabama could slot in at center. So this would be
And you would
some,
do like Brailsford over Connor Lou?
if Lou is still there, no, I would take Lou. I don't know
Okay,
if
Lou
still
is
there.
here.
Yeah. If Lou is there, that would be somebody I'd like. As far
Okay.
as wide receivers go, if CJ Daniels slips this far, that would be somebody I'd be interested in.
Do you like Lou over Daniels?
I would take Daniels over Lou.
Okay.
And then another wide receiver could be interesting here. Be like Ted Hurst from Georgia State.
I'm looking
It's
to
a
see
little
if,
early from where he's getting projected, but I don't know.
I think the users of the simulator like Hurst. I believe
Yeah.
Hurst is probably already off the board. Yeah, Hurst is going to New England.
I mean, you can look
So-
at Malachi Fields there as well as a big X outside wide receiver.
Yes, that would be a fun one.
Okay, so Dalton, if you have to choose between Malachi Fields and CJ Daniels, which one do you like better?
Daniels.
Okay, so Daniels is 90.
Daniels probably should have come out last year. He just had he just unfortunately had to play with Garrett Nussmeier for a year and then forced his hand to come back.
Okay, so that was Colton Hood, CJ Daniels. So Ryan, in this one, it won't let you take Lemon and it won't let you take Mendoza. So who's your dream round 2 if you have to choose like between Boston, Concepcion, and Vega?
I would probably take Vega here. Just a dominant interior offensive lineman, plug and play day one. Just put him in there and like get that running game going. I mean, if they can get Ashton Genty, 15 to 1,800 yards and double-digit touchdowns, I would do that.
Okay. And then Vega's the dream in round 2. But if the board falls to where you can't take Vega, you can't take Freeling, and you can't take Hood in round 2, what
I'd be on the Christian Miller bandwagon again, just that interior defensive lineman, Ideally, Max Crosby's there, and you can put Miller next to him. I can't imagine what this defensive line would look like without Max Crosby because they had 3 guys on the field last year that none of them could beat single blocks, while Max Crosby was getting 2 or 3 guys sent at him every down.
Okay. So Dalton, if Vega and or Miller were the round 2 picks, what would you be looking at in round 3?
Round 3, probably looking linebacker or wide receiver. I think those are probably the 2 biggest needs. I mean, linebacker was just such a glaring issue last year, and they just kind of had stopgaps at the position, especially Devin White is just not the future.
And it sniped Golday and Daniels before the Raiders' round 3 pick. So if Golday and Daniels are off the board, what linebackers would you be looking for in round 3?
I like Rodriguez, his production. I think what he runs will be important. Rodriguez is gone. Well, then, Ryan, you mentioned the need for someone to play that star position. A guy, this might be a little early for him, but a guy that I think is just really talented and would be kind of perfect in purely playing that star position. How about Harold Perkins from LSU? It's a little early, but that's kind of what he's going to do at the next level if he can do anything.
I think that'd be a little bit early, and you're talking about a position change, and then trusting him enough in coverage.
Yeah,
especially if you can't play zone every down when you put him out there at star. He's gonna have to cover some slot receivers.
Yeah,
I would think more along the wide receiver line, are any of Mendoza's teammates, are Cooper or Surratt available in the third round? If you're going to go defensive line or offensive line in the second round, getting him one of his buddies to come over with him from Indiana in the third round, especially if the linebackers you like aren't there.
So the Jets people that use the simulator really like Cooper going to the Jets in round 2, and Surratt is going to the Giants in round 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a late first on Surratt.
Yeah, so Ryan, you're mock drafting against the best 96 followers of the Draft Professor, right? So they like those players to their teams earlier.
I like Fields in the third round. He mentioned, they need an X. The Raiders right now are going to run out probably Trey Tucker, who's a diminutive, speed receiver, and Brock Bowers. But if you can get with the way that Mendoza throws the back shoulder fades. You need that big 6'3", 6'4" guy on the outside. Fields doesn't need to win down the field. He just has to have the body control in the hands to win when he doesn't get on top and they want to go back shoulder and then be a threat in the red zone. I would love to get a big physical receiver, especially in the third round to pair with him, a young guy.
Okay. So if you had to dream in round 2, would you prefer Ahinacor, Concepcion, or Boston?
I'd take Ahinacor. Like, I'm all in on him.
Okay. So we'll take Ahinacor there for the round 1 pick. So anytime you pick somebody in the simulator, they're going to move up. Okay. And because the Raiders have picked 1-1, when I pick Ahinacor, I think he was 30th overall. He's going to move way up the Raiders board. Okay. So Ahinacor is not available in round 2. And you're faced with, okay, Abney or insert other player. What else would you be looking for here in round 2, Ryan?
To me, it's someone on either side of the lines. Ideally, if you can get an offensive, defensive lineman. If you can't, I would go to the corner room at that point. I don't see, at this point, any of those offensive or defensive or offensive linemen being good enough to take it 36. I would probably stay with Abney and just, try to get to lock up a corner. This is a multi-year rebuild. They're not going to fill other holes in one off season.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dalton, if you get Ahinacor or Abney in round 2, what are you thinking you would do in round 3? Again, considering that Golday, Daniels, Fields all sniped before the Raiders' 3rd round pick.
I think at this point, probably looking at somebody like I think wide receiver is so deep here. I think you can still find somebody like McAllister from TCU could be an option. And then another big body on the outside. That's kind of, assuming Fields is not available, those would probably be a couple of the guys I'm looking at. I know McAllister's way down the board there.
That's okay. He's way down the board because nobody's picked him, and we're about to fix that. So I'm dropping it into the chat. This is going to be a great example at the end. Observe that he's 336th on the board. He's not going to be 336 when we finish. So that's a great example, Dalton, and you're feeding right into the demonstration that I like to give on these podcasts. Okay, so Ryan, you can't take Vega in round 2. You can't take Ahinacor. You can't take Lemon in round 2. What's your next dream for round 2?
Sonny Styles, but he won't be there. If the Raiders could add a linebacker like that would be amazing.
Okay.
That would solve a lot of issues.
Yeah, I don't see Styles falling past Buffalo, but that's just me. So in this one, Lee Hunter dropped. So in round 2, the best offensive tackles on the board right now are like Tiernan, Barber, PJ Williams, Blake Miller, and then Isaiah World, Jude Bowery, Drew Shelton. But I don't know that I've heard of too many people taking any of those players, in the top 36 or 37 picks. Maybe Tiernan. Where are you on Tiernan, Ryan?
I have him more in the 3rd round.
Got it.
I think he's a versatile guy. I don't know if he's going to stick out at tackle. He may have to slide inside. I wouldn't take him that high.
Okay. And then is there any interior offensive lineman that you would take as high as 36, such as Dunker, Brian Parker? Dalton had mentioned that he liked Parker Brailsford, but I don't know if that was a round 2 or a round 3 like.
That was more round 3.
Got it. Any other offensive lineman to consider at pick 36, Ryan, or do we have to look elsewhere?
I would look elsewhere. One guy that I like, obviously we haven't talked about it, is Anthony Hill out of Texas, just another physical freak. linebacker that can run around and cover. It'd be a stretch, I think, to take him at 36, but he's a guy that if the Raiders can trade back up into the second round, or maybe he falls to the third round, when you start talking about guys that are size, speed athletes that they can play 3 downs, he fits that mold.
Okay. So, Dalton, if linebacker got addressed early, what offensive lineman do you like in round 3 that we haven't drafted yet? So between like Rutledge and Brailsford, is there one of those guys that you like over the other?
I would take Rutledge just because I think he is more of a true guard. I think that would probably be the direction I'd go. Just because Brailsford, I think, has the potential to be a very good center, but there's also a chance that it just doesn't work at his size at all. I think Rutledge has a much higher floor.
Okay. So, Ryan, if you can't take Ihenekor or Viga in round 2, and you can't take Lemon or Styles in round 2, who's your next dream for round 2?
It's like Caden McDonald at Ohio State. If he's on the board at 36, we haven't talked about him yet, or Peter Woods is there too. If Peter Woods got to that pick in the second round, yeah, I like Caden McDonald. I think he's a physical guy. He could play that 0 or 1 technique inside. There's some pass rush, definitely a dominant run blocker. That if the Raiders could get their hands on him and just throw him inside, just give you an interior defensive lineman with some presence.
Okay, so if the McDonald dream in round 2 doesn't come through and the board looks like this in round 2, Ryan, and again, the offensive linemen that you like, they're not there, right? Dunker, Parker, Casey right now are the highest graded offensive interior, and the best tackles are Tiernan, Barber, Williams, Miller. What are you thinking is your next best possible round 2 pick? And again, it also won't let you pick the players that you've already grabbed, such as Freeling, Hood, Miller, Abney, Hill. Those guys are all gone. What would you do?
I would go back to look at the safety room and just see if there's another maybe safety there that I like. There's
So
McNeil
Warren
Warren
was somebody you picked in the second round challenge. We haven't talked about him with Fanatic mode. So you like McNeil Warren at 36?
I do. I think he's an option at 36 for them.
Okay. So if you do McDonald or McNeil Warren, Dalton, in round 2, what are you looking at in round 3, knowing that, for example, Golday, Daniels, Fields, McAllister, Rutledge all snipe before the Raiders pick?
I think let's look to the offensive line here. I think they just need so much help there.
So like Connor Lew is here in round 3.
Yeah. I don't mind that at all. That would probably be I would take Logan Jones here over Connor Lew. I'm a little higher on Jones than Lew. I think part of it is I think Jones might be able to give you a little more options in terms of where you move him around. But I think I like him. You probably stick him at center and just keep JPJ at guard at that point, which I think is fine.
Okay. So, Ryan, we've got 2 more of these to do. And we haven't talked about Casey Concepcion or Denzel Boston, which were 2 players that you were hoping would drop to round 2 when we did the second round challenge that never did. Is there one of those guys that you like more than the other?
I like Concepcion a little bit better. I just think the ability to separate and be more of a vertical passing threat. The Raiders are going to have Brock Bowers work in the intermediate part of the field. So if just get another speed receiver that can win those vertical routes, and a guy that just can make people miss in the open field.
Okay, so if you can't take Concepcion in round 2, And McNeil Warren, Anthony Hill, Keith Abney, Kristen Miller, Colton Hood, Monroe Freeling are also off the board in round 2. What's your next best round 2 pick there, Ryan?
Is Peter Woods there, or is he gone on this one? I think he's gone.
Yep.
I look at Surratt. We've been looking at the wide receiver room. He's finally in a position. Did we take Concepcion in this?
We did.
This one,
but I was just doing that to get him far enough up the board that if he falls to the Raiders, he's the pick.
If this is what's on the board, I would consider Surratt. I think there's some Keenan Allen into it in his game. And the Raiders just need, options. And I don't love the offensive linemen that were there in the second round for them.
Yep. And this is what this simulator does. It's basically going to put you in situations where you're not going to like the board, but you still have to make a pick anyway. So, Dalton, if wide receiver was addressed for the Raiders in round 2, and a lot of the offensive linemen that you like are off the board, which would include Rutledge and Logan Jones, what would you do?
Maybe look at what's there at linebacker at this point.
It'll be, and generally speaking, when you do this, it's going to be the same board. So, we're doing 8 straight mocks. The boards aren't going to move. So if, for example, you were looking for a player earlier and he wasn't there, Rodriguez might be here now. Yeah, so Rodriguez is here, but you guys were saying your grade on him is more round 4.
Yeah, it'll really come down to what he runs. But maybe let's look at corner.
You talked about the star position earlier. I think Kyle Lewis is a guy that has a chance with his coverage skills. If you really wanted to play a light box and put him and try to make him the star, and then hopefully you could hide him on third downs where he wouldn't get matched up man-on-man a ton. But he's someone that you'd have to be creative with a defensive coordinator if you're going to play him in the slot position.
And you would take Lewis over Keontae Scott?
Probably not.
Right.
No.
No,
I just go straight slot.
Yeah, I'm good with Scott there.
Okay. And then this will be the final one that we do. So last time you took Concepcion as your next dream in round 2, Boston, Ryan.
Let's take Peter Woods this time, if he's there.
Okay. So just so you know, if Woods falls, he's already 8th on the board. So he'll be high enough on the board that he would be the pick.
Yeah. I would take Peter Woods if he was there in the second round.
Okay. So part of this is setting up a draft board, right? So everything here is setting up a draft board so that if a player does drop, he's not going to drop as far as your team in round 2. Okay. So is there, if your round 2 board really looked like this after taking Mendoza, where all of your favorite players, which include Pregnon, Banks, Freeland, Miller, Abney, Hill, McNeil Warren, Surratt are off the board, what would you do?
I'd look at Zion Young. He's a bigger, defensive end that can play the run. If the Raiders don't have Crosby on this team and they need a guy that can play the run and get up the field, or Messidor out of Miami, if one of those two ends is there, I'd probably lean that way.
Okay.
I haven't seen Messidor's name this whole time, now that I think about it.
Oh, well, and we just never picked him. He was there every single time. We just never picked him. Right. So again, everything on this simulator, but you have to kind of tear your mind down, because every other simulator, you see the same board. No matter what team you're drafting with, it's the same board. The way I've modeled this is 32 teams at 32 different boards, and the players that are at the top are the players that other users have picked for the Raiders. So until you come in and you do a couple of your own mocks, your favorite players won't be at the top, if that makes any sense. Okay. So if you address defensive line early and your favorite round 3 players, such as Golday, Daniels, Fields, McAllister, Rutledge, Jones, Scott, are off the board, Is there a third round offensive lineman that either Dalton or Ryan like for the Raiders here at 67?
Um,
I mean, Lou is here.
Lou here.
yeah, Lou's definitely there.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Ryan,
Yeah,
how high are you on Lou?
I haven't studied Lou.
Okay.
I don't know much about him at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know enough to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah. What do you think, Ryan, on terms of where JPJ should ideally play next year? Between center and guard.
I would play him at center. That's his position. That's what he's comfortable
I
at.
kind of agree.
But we've had two different offensive line coaches and staff say you're a guard. I think the first year it's because Andre James was still on the roster. I don't know what Pete Carroll was doing. That's why we don't know what really is going to happen here. I think Pete Carroll is more of the wanted prototype size, so they wanted the smaller Meredith inside, and they moved JPJ just because he's physical in the run game, and they thought they could play him at right guard. I would put him back at center, especially if you're going to be running this stretch zone play scheme where he can do that. He can get out into space and be a physical guy. I would. That's what I would do. So I would be looking to fill the guard positions.
I kind of agree.
So, do you like Isaiah World or PJ Williams or Austin Barber as a tackle in an outside zone too?
Not in the third round. I don't. I'm not really high on any of those guys.
Got it.
Yeah, third round's a little early.
Hopefully they sign a veteran, because to me, I'm measuring it against, if I'm going to take a guard in the third round for this scheme, is he better than Charles Grant? Because you have Charles Grant still on the roster, who's an athletic guy that can get out, and he's a good run blocker. He didn't play a lot, but when he did, he flashed in the 2 games that he was on the board. So to me, at that point, he has to be better fit for that scheme. I think Grant's a great fit for that type of scheme.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, like, we still don't know. Blaze might be a solid right tackle. We just saw him with Brennan Carroll last year, and we just have no idea if, like, what that did to his development. Like that, the thing that people outside of, like, the Raiders sphere don't really, I think, sometimes miss is just how bad Brennan Carroll was, and just, like, how much it just disrupted the entire offensive line, and how, like, it makes evaluating what they have so difficult now.
Yeah, I mean, essentially you took Dylan Parham, who, when he came out, they tried him at left guard. It didn't work. He was moved to right guard, and he was pretty functional there. And then Pete Carroll puts him back on the left side. Didn't work. JPJ, they took him from center, where he was really good as a rookie, and moved him to right guard. It didn't work. So we don't know what's going to happen with any of these guys. We talk about they need to add all these linemen. To me, they need to do it in free agency, because when you look at that line, Parham, if they re-sign him, has been in the league 4 years. JPJ is going to be a third-year guy. They have Rodgers, who's a second-year guy. They're going to have Grant, who's a second-year guy. Glaze is going to be a third-year guy. They spent a ton of draft picks in the second and third round on offensive linemen, and then they all went backwards last year. So to me, that's coaching. So who knows what's going to happen when you bring in a new staff?
You know, you sound just like Price Carter for the Chiefs, right? So one of the draft professors is Price Carter, who podcasts with Arrowhead Addict, and he consistently points out the Chiefs have drafted plenty of offensive linemen. Like, we don't need to keep drafting a lot of them. We might want to draft one to give us some variety in the room, but it's not like it's an overhaul. You just need the young guys that you drafted to get coached the right way.
Yeah.
So I love that point, Ryan. So Ryan, if defensive line was drafted in round 2 and you don't like the third round offensive line board, like, is there a corner that you like or a wide receiver that you like in round 3? Like, Jacoby Lane is there in round 3. Will Lee is there. Dalen Everett, Thaddeus Dixon.
I like Everett. I'm not a big Lane guy, and I'm a USC fan. I don't think Lane's going to run well at all at the combine. I think he's going to be somewhere in the mid 4.6s. I don't think he can create separation. I think he can win 50-50 balls, and he can win contested catches. I just don't think he's going to get open consistently. And I don't know if I want to pair that with Mendoza, especially at this point in the draft when I could take guys at other positions I think can be starters. Like, I like Will Lee. I like Everett on the outside. is corners, and I would go that way before I
Is there
took.
one that you like more than the other?
Probably, I'd probably like Lee a little bit more. Just I think he's going to run better at the combine, and we'll see. To me, on those outside, it depends on the scheme too. Like we don't know the scheme. We've mentioned that, so like, let me know what scheme they're going to run, and then we can start seeing which one of these guys are going to fit. But I have a pretty good suspicion that Carl Scott's going to come over from the Seahawks, who's their defensive passing game coordinator, and end up being the DC. So you would expect them to run a lot of what that cover 6, cover 8, where they're gonna mix and match those coverages and play a lot of zone.
Okay. So if you do, I would say you should be able to, after doing 2 of these, to start to see a lot of A's, right? So the entire grading on this simulator is groupthink. If you get a C or a D, you are probably the first one to draft that player in that round. Kind of thing.
Okay.
Whereas if you get an A, you're not the first. And if you get an A plus, like we did with Mendoza, that's the player at the top of the board. So I'm going to do a 7-round Seahawks mock. The reason why I'm picking Seattle, they only have 4 picks, so I don't have to really think about what I'm doing for Seattle. I want to look at who the Raiders pick through the whole draft based upon what we just did. And one of the players I want to actually look at is Eric McAllister, because I bet he's going to be the highest on the Raiders board. So there's a good chance that we're going to see the Raiders take Eric McAllister here. But I'm going to do my Seattle mock. And so if we look in round 1, the Raiders took Mendoza. Right. And then in round 2, they took Hood, which was a player that Ryan took twice. And then I'm going to do Cage Casey. And then in round 3, the Raiders took Rutledge. That was one of the guys that you guys picked. I saw the round 4 pick, but I didn't see who it was.
I think it said Antonio Williams.
Okay. So that was not somebody that we ended up picking. And this goes back to the more mocks you do, the more the board will look like what you want. So CJ Daniels just went to the Raiders. That was a player that you picked.
And then McAllister just went to the Raiders.
Your eyes are moving better than mine because I didn't even see the McAllister one.
I think it was the 5th round.
Yeah.
So if we look, Malik Benson, there's Eric McAllister. So once you get to round 4, the simulator takes BPAs, who's ever high on the board. In rounds 1 through 4, there's a position exclusivity. Once you get into round 5 and later, it's always who's the top player on the board. So you can see CJ Daniels there was one of the players taken.
That makes sense with how deep like the receiver class is too.
Yep. So essentially this simulator has you mock drafting against the other users of the simulator. I think that's the best way to put it, right? So the same way that you were hoping that some of your favorite players dropped around 3, I'm like, well, I know from doing this Jets podcast that the Jets fans were taking
I think it was Cooper. Yeah.
And Surratt to the Jets. And another example would be like Emmanuel McNeil Warren. He's another popular player that the Jets fans like. So the entire mindset behind Draft Professor is I want people for the Raiders coming in and doing what they think the Raiders should do based on how you grade the players. But as you saw, some of those mock drafts begin to get harder because if you don't value the player there and they don't fall to the next round, it's going to challenge you to find the players that you like graded or available in the draft where you've graded them. So, um, so Ryan, how do you feel after doing what we just did, like 18 Raiders mock drafts in about an hour?
Oh no, feel good. I mean, filled a lot of holes, and they still have a lot of needs. And like we said, they went a ton of different directions. There was some spots in the second round where I just didn't like any of the offensive linemen, and you have to pivot. Where else can we find value? Where else can we fill holes? And then hopefully in the third round, you can come back and find an offensive lineman you like. So, no, it's good. I wish the Raiders had more picks. I wish they had more than 10. Let's go with 20. Why not? Like, they may trade down. Spytech moved around a lot last year in the draft to help fill holes, but this is a young roster. They have like 31 or 32 players under contract, and they had an 11-man draft class last year. And I think 9 of them are still on the roster. So this will be a lot funner to do when you get into like first week of April after we get through a couple of weeks of free agency, and then really be able to hone down, okay, this is where they have needs and they have fits with the players that are available.
So Dalton, Dalton, I don't know that you and I had, even though we podcast together so many times before, I don't know that you and I had ever done this together before.
I think we did it like pre-show once. We did like a 3-round challenge.
Got it.
Once, like this was back in like November though, so very different board at that point. Very different draft situation because the Raiders were sitting at like 5 or 6. So instead of Mendoza, we were talking about people like Maui Noa and Fano.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I know for a while the Raiders didn't have the number 1 overall pick, so they were further down in the draft order to where quarterbacks weren't available. I do remember. Yeah. Now that you say that, I do remember. Yeah. So Ryan, do you want to take a moment, introduce yourself to everybody watching the podcast, and let them know about your Raiders content and your draft content?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. The handle's RHOLM22, as you can see there. I've been doing all 22 breakdown of Raiders games since 2018. So I think I'm through season 9. So I do a lot of that. You can catch a lot of information I'll put out there, basically September through early January when the season ends. And then, I'm more interested in like free agency and coaches and GMs. So I put a lot of content out there in January, and fortunately for me, but unfortunately for the organization, they've had a lot of turnover of GMs and head coaches and who to interview and all of that. So I just love the sport of football. I grew up Raiders. I got jerseys and stuff hanging on the wall behind me, and grew up in LA. So been a season ticket holder for several seasons. And my daytime job isn't another sport. It's not in football, but my passion's football.
Dull.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Ryan, if you're in the Raiders sphere and you don't follow Ryan yet, definitely a great follow for film breakdowns, especially. Does an awesome job. I watch him a ton. But
learned a lot of systems over the last few years.
Absolutely. You can find my stuff at the Raider Ramble. That's where I do most of my writing. We didn't talk about Mendoza too much, but I do have about a 1,800 word deep dive on him coming out in the next couple days. So definitely keep an eye out for that. If you really want to see like an idea of how it's going to have to work in order for him to succeed with the Raiders, get into kind of that and like what reasonable expectations should be. And then I also do some podcasting over at Degenerate Sports Network. On Tuesdays, we have our draft show, Draft Degenerates, at 9 on Tuesdays, and at 9:30 on Wednesdays, you can catch our gambling show over there. We're picking all kinds of sports over there.
Yeah, and I know Dalton we're going to be doing a betting show for the Combine. And I know that I've mentioned that to Dalton where there's a couple of draft professors that for fun, like who's going to run the fastest 40 time. And Dalton has been invited and said, yeah, he would definitely do that podcast with us. So, and Ryan, I definitely hope that you come back on the channel. We have a lot of people talking about the draft at Draft Professor. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit here after we go off air. But I want to say, I am truly appreciative that you took an hour out of your Super Bowl Sunday to do some Raiders mock drafts with us. And ultimately, the more mocks you do on the Draft Professor Simulator, the more your board will be reflected when you see the other picks. So, because more than likely so many people have taken third round wide receivers to the Raiders, that's why we saw like in rounds 4 and 5, all those wide receivers go. Is that the board is probably stacked with wide receivers at that point. Oh yeah, and I forgot to show that. There was one other thing I wanted to show now that I remember that. So if you go to the team needs section of the website and you look at all of these players that we took, so like McAllister was 336 when we took him. Once this page calculates so that it knows how to build, if you go to the player list, this is the order the players are going to be fed to the Raiders on the simulator. So you can see Mendoza's at the top. And then if you look, I'm looking for Vega. Yeah. So you see Vega's 11, but when we took him, he was 21. So when we took him in round 1, he moved up 10 spots. Ihenekor is 15th right now. The first time we took Ihenekor, he was 34th. So the idea is this the list of players that the Raiders would be considering in the order they would consider them? So you can even see McDonald is 20. I don't know if I wrote down what McDonald was when we took him. No, but like McAllister was 336, right? So if I look up McAllister here, he's now 74th. Right. So pretty much once you get beyond like player 150, a player can go from 150 into the 70s or from 300 into the 70s with just one third round pick kind of thing. So ultimately, this is fans mock drafting against other fans. That's my entire premise behind the Draft Professor. Draft Professor also does group mock drafts every Friday night. So if either of you or any of your followers would like to draft for the Raiders, we do 3-round mocks every Friday night. We have 32 people drafting for 32 teams. So if you want to see who's valuing Surratt where, you'll begin to see where some of those people are because they're going to be mock drafting against you. So it's a lot of fun. We do that 7 p.m. Eastern every Friday night. If you want to sign up for that, you can go to the Draft Professor Twitter page, and the pinned post is the group mock draft. So all you have to do is drop your name into the reply, and I will get in touch with you to make the picks for your team. So with that being said, for Ryan, Dalton, myself, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on a podcast again, ironically, in 45 minutes, where we have some different people coming on to do Miami Dolphins mock drafts. So thank you, everybody.